These are notes B4C, and take a minute and set up your page. So pause the video when you need to. All right, so we've got B4C, period 5. Say hello to the people online. Okay, so B4C, we're going to do half today and the other half on Monday. So we're going to compare the structure of viruses to cells. There's more to the teak, but that's what we're going to do today. Compare the structure of viruses to cells. And then I'm going to just put ... It says you're also going to describe viral reproduction, describe the role of viruses in causing diseases such as HIV and the flu. We'll get to that on the next unit that we do. So if you're doing colors, pick a color so you can have this in. So I'm going to start off here, and the first thing I'm going to write up here is alive or not. There's a Bill Nye video for you. Get online tonight. Alive or not? How do you tell if something's alive?
It has a cell.
Okay, it's got to be made of cells. You're looking for a pulse.
It has DNA.
Has DNA. Let's say you're walking along the beach because you're going to the ocean. Let's say if we were going to go someplace, we might as well go someplace nice where it's nice and sunny, beachy. And you're walking along the beach and you see something and you want to know if it's alive. What are you going to do? Touch it. You're going to poke it with a stick, right? Probably not going to touch it. Yeah, poke it with a stick. You're going to see if it moves or responds, right? So there are lots of things that we do to check and see if something's alive or not. And when we do that, we call these the processes of life. So does it move? Does it grow? Does it reproduce? Is it made of cells? Does it have DNA? So we can run through this list of things. Is this alive? And viruses, the only thing they have is DNA. So there are 11 processes of life. Viruses have 1. They're not considered alive. So viruses don't show any of the signs of living things except for the DNA. So most times what people are going to say, they're not really living things. They don't reproduce on their own. They don't move. They don't grow. You can poke them with a stick. They're not going to respond. No, you can't kill it because it's not alive. The only thing we can do to try and get rid of them is we try and break up the chemicals that make them up. So that's what it's talking about here. So let's talk about the structure. Okay, so they're very simple. So they're very simple. No, and I'm going to say it just as no organelles. I could put in there no membrane-bound organelles, but it's the same thing. They don't have any organelles. There are no parts to them on the inside. So even bacteria have organelles. They have little bitty organelles. They don't have membranes around them, but they have little things inside that do stuff. So they have all these parts. They move, they grow, they reproduce, they do stuff on their own. But viruses do none of that. So viruses aren't considered to be alive. They basically have a protein coat with little different proteins on the outside, and they have some type of nucleic acid on the inside. And that's it.
Viruses can't reproduce, how are they?
Okay, so if viruses can't reproduce, and we'll talk about this more on Monday when you come in. But basically, viruses, the chemicals on the outside, the proteins on the outside, attach to proteins on the outside of your cell. They inject it's not even a thing that they move and do, but they basically inject their DNA inside of you. And your cell says, holy crap, that's DNA. Goes out and grabs it, takes it to the nucleus, and follows the instructions. So your own cell makes the viruses for it. And once your cell gets filled up with all these viruses, it explodes open, killing that cell, and then all those viruses can move and hit up other cells.
So you're telling me, like, somebody gets COVID, basically it's something attacking your cells, and then your own cells are giving you a disease.
Yes.
How long do viruses?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
How long do viruses last?
Viruses can last for a long time on a surface. So, but they're easy to get rid of. You know, soap usually will do away with the protein. So Lysol, bleach stuff, any of the cleaners, those will break up the membranes for them. So they're pretty easy to damage and do away with. But yeah, if you don't clean up, like if you're wearing that mask over and over and over again, really? you're just loading up ignore the bacteria, but any viruses that are there are going to get there too. So, yeah. Yeah, so cleaning, we wash stuff, that gets rid of the viruses. So that whole hygiene thing is kind of important. Okay, so they're really, really, really simple. So they've got three basic parts. So let's talk about the parts. The first part is the capsid. How much time do I have left? Okay, good for time. The capsid is this protein coat on the outside. And you remember we looked at some of those pictures of viruses? Again, if you just Google virus structure, you're going to pop up with a lot of different pictures. It's not just one protein that's on the outside of the virus. They've got a major protein that makes up the capsid. It's like think about a pill, and you've got like those little capsules. Think about that. That's the capsule on the outside, and that holds stuff on the inside. So basically they have this protein coat on the outside, but then it's got stuff stuck on it. So if you were thinking of a capsule like a pill, here would be your capsule. So the whole plastic coating on the outside, that would be that. And then they have these little chemicals on the outside, and those are proteins, different proteins, and those are the proteins that they use to attach to your cell. Everything in your body is running on chemistry, right? Chemical reactions. And so proteins are just really huge chemicals. And so you have certain proteins on the outside of your cells that your body recognizes as self. When something else comes in, it mimics those proteins, so it kind of sneaks in that way, and it can attach to the proteins on the outside of your cell like other chemicals normally would. And so for a while, your body's faked out by it, but then once your cells start dying, your body kind of clicks in, your immune system clicks in and says, oh, hey, something's wrong here. And once you have enough, it recognizes those cells now that have that weird, just slightly different protein on the outside, and it goes and kills any of those cells that have those virus things on the outside. It'll kill those cells. So if it's had a virus on the outside of it, your own body starts to kill its own cells, trying to get rid of those cells that have been infected. It's like when we talk about cutting out the infection, that's what it's doing there. So we have a protein, a capsid on the outside, and it has these with smaller proteins. I'm going to say smaller proteins. Yeah. It depends on the white blood cells. The most common type of white blood cell is going to eat it. That macrophage, it just eats any cell that's been damaged by that, it'll eat it. And it can only eat so much, and so it'll kill it in the process. Other types of white blood cells, you know how the virus was attaching to the outside? Other types of white blood cells will attach to the outside of the virus, so it keeps the proteins on the outside of the virus from attaching to a cell. So it's like the virus attaches to the white blood cell, and then the white blood cell basically makes it immobile, makes it not be able to do anything. Kind of like wrapping a net around you almost, so you could no longer do and move and go anywhere or do anything. So it immobilizes it, and then it gets rid of it. You know, you have lymph nodes, right? Yeah. So you've got them all throughout your body, and so once those white blood cells have immobilized, say, one of the viruses, then it's going to be in the bloodstream. It'll get to a lymph node, and it's all chemical signals, and it'll activate it, and it'll stay inside the lymph node and be destroyed. Another way is you've got other white blood cells that put out chemicals that can attach to the receptors on the virus, and again keeps them from hooking up to a cell. So those are called antigens. Antigens, have you heard of those? Yeah. So one of the tests for COVID now is they can do the nasal swab test, which is okay, not the greatest. But the best one is to know if you've been exposed to it is a blood test. And what they look for are antigens. Has your immune system produced chemicals to combat the virus? And those are antigens. So the antigens will actually hook up, they're just little chemicals, and they hook up to these, and so they basically keep these from hooking up to a cell. So they make it inert so it can no longer function. And then your immune system will take care of it. No. They don't fight back or anything. They're non-living. They're just a chemical. It's like saying, does salt water fight back? Nope. Yeah, there's nothing there. What's weird is that you have some viruses that have, and I'm going to say evolved, but that's not even the way it is because they're not alive, but they actually attack the white blood cells that would normally kill them. The AIDS disease, the HIV virus, that's what it does. It's weird. It goes for the immune system, which is one of the reasons it was so successful for so long as a disease, because it took out the system that was responsible for protecting you like that. Okay, so we have the capsid, and that's the protein coat, and then on the outside of that protein coat, you have these little bitty, smaller proteins called receptors. Okay, so let's talk about those receptors a little bit. You have these surface proteins called receptors. And this is what's used to attach to a cell. So these little receptors are what it uses to chemically attach to a cell. So when we talk about the antigen antibody response, you produce all sorts of chemicals. And I said antigen. Antigen is what's on the thing here. When you produce antibodies, then you're producing antibodies against a certain antigen. So those are chemicals that your body looks for. So it's going to attach to a cell. If you produce these antibodies, then the antibodies are things that are going to attach to this. So I'm sorry, I used the wrong word a while ago. Antigens are produced by the pathogen, by the organism that's going to make you be sick. And so that's what it's talking about here. So you have these little surface proteins on this virus that are called antigens. They're also known as receptors, but this is, the word antigen is kind of generic. Anything, any chemical that can be produced by a living thing or a virus that causes a response from you is called an antigen. So yeah, we don't have time to get into the immune system. Again, take anatomy. Yeah? It's really pretty interesting. Take anatomy. Okay, so you've got these little extra proteins on the outside of this, and they're going to be chemically attaching to the cell. Do I have time? Yeah, I do. I have 6 minutes. Okay, so these are the little receptors, and they are unique to each virus, to each type of virus. Nope. So they're unique to each virus, to each type of virus. So the little proteins that are on the outside of the coronavirus are unique to that particular coronavirus. The third part is that they have a nucleic acid. Either DNA or RNA. So they're going to have either RNA or DNA. And I'm going to say it's injected. They don't physically inject. It's all a chemical process, but chemicals can move. Yes, they can move. They can act like little machinery. So I'm going to say this as it is here. This little DNA or RNA is injected into the host cell. Okay, host cell. Do you guys know what that is? Like, if you have a tick on you, you are the host for the tick. You're like serving him dinner. Same thing with the other ones here. So it's injected, and then this DNA, once it's in the host cell, it's used to make new viruses. So again, your body's doing all the work for them. So your body is basically, your cell has been co-opted to make viruses. Now, the last thing I'm going to write down here, viruses and cells both have nucleic acids. They both have proteins. But viruses have nothing else after that. None of the other cell parts. They have nothing else. They have no other cell parts. That's what I'm focused on. So that's the big difference between them. The virus is just flat out, they aren't alive. They have protein, they have the thick protein coat, they have extra little proteins on the outside. So when you see those in color, when you see different colors, those are different proteins that they're made of. And proteins are Godzilla molecules. They're massive. So they can be really huge. But they have those proteins, and then they have the genetic material on the inside, and that's it. Okay? While you pack up your stuff, I'm going to